Who knows what this series is called? Greatest Hits, 2006 to 2018. I had this idea a couple of months ago where I said, all right, what do I want to do over the summer? I thought, how about I go through my entire catalog of sermons and pick out some of the more meaningful sermons that I have ever given. I have 7 sermons picked out. I had to narrow it down because actually it's kind of like an album. You know how there's like good album length? An artist will go into the recording studio, they'll record 20 songs, but then they cut it down to maybe 10 songs or 11 tracks. I have cut this down to 7 tracks. And the years, 2006 to 2018, one of these weeks, I will actually pull out the first sermon that I ever gave my entire life. It's so funny, too, because I've been watching clips, some videos from older sermons from 2006, 2007, and it's just really interesting to look back on your former self. And there's things, so I think one of the ideas, I have this phrase here, one of the things that I've noticed about each of these sermons is, for me, it's a snapshot in time of the person who I was when I gave that sermon. And that's what's been really interesting because I see a progression of who I am. And I think that's true for all of us. Who you are today is, you're not the same person that you were 7 years ago. Hopefully the person that you are today, you'll be a different person. I mean, you ultimately will be because all your cells are replaced pretty much on a daily basis every 7 years. And so the person you are today will be different 7 years from now. But it's been really interesting to look back and say, ooh, who was I 10 years ago? Who was I when I first started giving sermons? What did I think? What did I believe? What were the things that I were learning, the things that were important to me? Are they still important? And some of the things, yes, they are still important. Some of the things, they don't matter to me anymore. Some things I don't really believe the same way as I used to believe 12 years ago. And that's just how it works. So every sermon, it's been so interesting to look back because it gives me a picture of the person who I formerly was. Today, I am Dave 2023, and so each sermon that I'll give, it will be quite different than the sermon that I gave however many years ago it happens to be. And what I wanted to do when I gave these sermons is I wanted to pull them apart a little bit. So I've reworked them, I've added some material, I've cut some material, and I also wanted to give the backstory about these sermons. Why were they meaningful to me at the time? Why are they still meaningful? What things do I still believe? What things do I actually look at a little bit differently now? What did I learn? Because every single sermon, I learned something. When I stand up here and I speak to you, I'm basically sharing a reflection of who I am at this particular moment in time. And my hope whenever I share a sermon is that what I have seen, because I have to see something first. I'm never going to give a sermon if I haven't seen it, if it hasn't changed or inspired me in a particular way, if it's something that isn't working on me. And my hope whenever I give a sermon is that it will then inspire you to have the same sort of experience or response in your own particular way, because you're viewing my sermon in a much different way than how I'm viewing my sermon. You're viewing my sermon through your particular lens. And so I want to show you what was the lens through which I was giving these sermons however many years ago they happened to be. So maybe you've heard these sermons before, maybe you've forgotten them, there will be new material, and maybe you'll hear, oh, that's so interesting because I never knew about the story behind the sermon. So maybe I could have even called this series The Stories Behind the Sermons. We'll start in 2018 with a sermon called What I Learned from My First Acupuncture Treatment. Who remembers this one? Take requests? I could take a request. I actually thought about that. If you have a request, send it to me. Maybe I will rework. Maybe I'll cut a track and I'll add another one. Now, okay, what I learned from my first acupuncture treatment. The original version, September 2018, so just about 5 years ago, and you have all forgotten it already. Now, here's a little story behind the sermon. I started acupuncture in June of 2018. The first meeting that I had with the acupuncturist, he said a couple of things to me. He said a few sentences that just stood out to me. There was some resonance with what he said. And these few sentences that he spoke to me, they kept playing over and over and over again in my mind. And I just couldn't shake these ideas. There was one particular sentence, which I will share with you in a few moments, that I couldn't leave it. It just stayed with me, and I knew that there was some wisdom, some profound truth hidden in these sentences. This sermon ultimately, these few sentences only became basically the whole grist for this particular sermon, but for an entire series, which I had forgotten I ever gave this series, which is really interesting because you look back through your catalog and you're like, oh, I totally forgot about that series. This is a month. It occupied a month, 2 months of my time, of my life that I poured everything into, and yet I forgot I even gave these sermons. So this series, it was titled Awaken Basics. Anyone remember that one? That ring a bell? It didn't for me, so don't feel bad. But this particular sermon, it resonated and it stood out to me. And these sentences, they gave me a framework for understanding what church is all about, gave me an understanding of what Awaken is all about, and what my role of a pastor is. And honestly, the reason why I chose this one is because these sentences continue to shape who I am. They continue to give me a framework for what I'm doing here as I'm pastoring Awaken, whenever I stand up here and give a sermon. Now, I mentioned I gave this sermon in 2018. For me, I look at 2018 and it was a rebuilding year for me. 2017 was the year which Reese was born. That was a very difficult year for me. I had a period of burnout for 2 months. I couldn't give a sermon. I was just limping through life. And then at the end of 2017 into 2018, things started to turn the corner a little bit. But 2018, I look at it as a time in my life when I was relearning, well, what does it mean to live? I was learning, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to be a parent? And I was also relearning, well, what does it mean to be a pastor? I look at 2017 as a turning point in my life because there was a particular way in which I was pastoring up to 2017. But then things began shifting in 2018. I began viewing my role and who I was through a very, very different lens. If I were to look at my arc as a pastor, you have kind of up to 2017, and then it's almost, I don't know if it's coming down or going back up, or I don't know which direction, but there's a curve that happened 2017 to 2018. 2018 for me was relearning, okay, who am I? What am I doing here? What's my role? And how do I live life again? Because I had lost my joy. So how do I recapture joy? How do I recapture the energy and life that I felt like I once had? But the way in which it works is that you can't go back to where you were. You try to recapture it. That's why we love nostalgia, because there's something about our past that's easier. We're going through something difficult, and so we want a time of ease. We want to be reminded of when things were going smoothly, when everything was easy. But the truth is, you can't go back to who you were. You might be able to recapture some of the essence, some of the spirit of who you were, but ultimately you are a different person. So for me, when I look back on my life, 2018 was me learning to be a different person and learning how to have joy and energy again. But it's like Dave 2.0, and I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning what that looks like. Now, the advice that I was given in 2018 from a mentor who was helping me walk through this whole rebuilding phase was to keep a notebook and then record whatever it is that jumps out at me. I have mentioned this many, many different times because this was really, really important. Still something that I do to this day. Actually, all right, I'll cut the, we won't. All right, I'll just tell you one thing. So one thing that I found, we were just on vacation in Florida, and we were told that you have to close your blinds every single night by 9 o'clock p.m. because the loggerhead turtles are mating, and so they are attracted to light. And the light from the hotel would attract the turtles, and they would actually be walking away from the beach because they're looking for where the sun is setting. And then they can make their way to the sun, to the light, because that's where they're going to lay their eggs. I don't know why that matters, but there was something about this where I'm thinking, there's some truth hidden in this. There's some wisdom in this. And it'll probably show up in a sermon like 5 years from now or some other format. But that's what I do. I just keep a notebook. Whenever something jumps out at me, I don't know what it means. I don't know the wisdom necessarily in it, but I write it down because there's something about it that is speaking to me. And the advice that was given to me is record all of it because the sermons are right there. The wisdom is right there in front of you. It's in your life. It's in the midst of the everyday. And you may not know exactly what it means, but record it. Capture it. Otherwise, it'll be forgotten. And the wisdom that it's trying to speak to you, it will be lost. So if I could give you one piece of advice today, this year, this month, whatever, carry around a notebook. Keep a running tally on your phone of all the things that are speaking to you. So I had this notebook, and immediately after my first acupuncture session with Aaron Kwan, I wrote these sentences down. I think I was in my car. I left his office and I wrote these down because I knew there was something about them that was speaking to me. June 2018, I started acupuncture. I walked into this office. I was extremely, extremely nervous. I remember getting a haircut on my way to acupuncture, and I was nervously chatting with the guy who was cutting my hair because I'm like, someone's going to stick needles into my skin? How can this possibly be a good idea? What if he hits an artery or a vein? I mean, I had like worst case scenario. It's like, all right, I hope my will is all settled and all that's taken care of, life insurance, all that, because who knows if I'm going to make it out of acupuncture. I was extremely nervous. We sat across this large wooden desk. We went through my medical history. Finally, after a half-hour conversation of what had brought me to his office, he says this: "Okay, it is time for your treatment." In which, at that point, my heart started beating a little bit faster. You kind of look down. You ever have that moment in life where you look down and it's like your shirt is, you're like, oh, it's time for the needles. So he says, all right, go lay down on this table, and I'll be right back in. There's quiet music playing in the background. Didn't work. Did not calm me down at all. Then he enters back into the room. There's some of those acupuncture needles. He proceeds to flick, and I mean flick. It was crazy how he did this. I had no idea how this was done. I didn't know if they jam them in or what they do, but he just would take the needle out of the package and just kind of flick it into my skin. 11 needles, one being on the top of my head. What was really, really fascinating during this experience was whenever he would put a needle in, he would be able to tell me something about my body or about the organ where he was putting the needle, where it corresponded with. And he was like, hey, I see you have some damage here on your leg. I'm like, yeah, I've broken my leg twice and torn the ACL twice. He's like, yeah, I can tell this leg has gone through some damage. And then some places he would try putting the needle in, and the needle, it wouldn't even glide in. It would be as if the needle would just bounce right back out. And there were actually a couple of places where he was really having trouble getting the needle in. And he said, oh, I can see that you're having some trouble with this area of your body. This organ is telling me something. But then there were other needles that would just simply glide right in. And that was telling him something else. Your body is at ease here. There's no tension in this part. Now, for 18 months, I would go to the office, sometimes twice a week. I'd walk in, I'd lie on the table. After the first time when I realized I was safe, I was going to live, I was totally fine. I actually enjoyed it. He would flick 11 needles or however many needles in, sometimes a little bit more. And then here's what he would say to me. He would say, "Rest now, stressed out pastor." And then he would turn the lights off, close the door, and say, "I'll be back." Honestly, those 20 minutes in the dark with those needles, it was a gift. It was a gift that was given to me. Now, here's what he said to me on that first meeting. Besides, "Rest now, stressed out pastor," here's what he said that I wrote down in my notebook immediately. "I can tell that your body is very tense. For some reason, your body is unable to relax. You're holding everything tightly. I don't know why this is, but while you're here under my care, however long it may happen to be, your job is to figure out why this is. I believe all my patients come here for a reason, and this is your reason, to learn to loosen the grip." Some of the first words that he spoke to me. I believe all my patients come here for a reason. And then he would close the door. "Rest now, stressed out pastor," for 18 months. Now, here's the sentence that stood out to me. I mean, everything he said was like, pfft, mind being blown. So much wisdom there. But here's the sentence that I've been carrying with me ever since for over 5 years now. I believe all my patients come here for a reason. It's the same thing I believe about you here at Awaken. Remember, I said that this gave me a whole new framework for understanding church and my role as a pastor, for understanding Awaken. And it was, oh my goodness, every single person who comes to Awaken, they're here for a reason. Maybe you're here for a week, although everyone here has been here much longer than a week. But however long you're here, if it's a couple of years, even if we have a visitor and they're here for a week, my mindset, my thinking is they are here this morning. You are here this morning for a reason. And however long you happen to be at Awaken, however long I happen to be your pastor giving sermons, your job is to listen and discern. What is it that you are learning here? What is the reason that you are here in this place at this moment? What is the Spirit trying to teach you? So I started living through this lens. Okay, everyone's here for a reason. How can I offer them the same gift that Aaron Kwan, the acupuncturist, had offered me? The same gift, space to listen, to hear, to receive whatever it is that you need to receive during this season of your life. You are here for a reason. And your job is to understand what that reason is. Maybe you've had a difficult experience and you need healing. Maybe you need a place of community to be with others, to support you on your journey. Maybe you need a place to be challenged, to be inspired for the next step in your journey of life. I don't know what that reason is. Maybe you don't even know what that reason is, and that's okay. Maybe it shifts over time as well. Maybe the reason why you initially came here, well, maybe that reason has been fulfilled, and now there's a different reason. There's something different that the Spirit is trying to teach you. When I heard these words, and as I sat with them, I said, ooh, yeah, this is the type of pastor I want to be. I want to believe that every single person who steps through the door of Awaken is here for a reason. And how can I best support you on your journey of discerning what that reason happens to be? Now, at the same time that I heard these words, I also came across this verse. It's from 1 Peter 1:18 from the Message translation, the translation by Eugene Peterson. Your life is a journey. You must travel with a deep consciousness of God. I love this verse. I love this translation. Your life is a journey, and you must travel with a deep consciousness of God. What was the first vision statement of Awaken? All the way back in, what was that, 2009, 2010? Creating an awareness to God's presence. So I hear this verse, and oh my goodness, yeah, this is what Awaken is all about. How do we create an awareness to God's presence? Maybe another way of saying this verse, your life is a journey. You must travel with a deep awareness of God. A deep awareness of the Spirit traveling with you. The Spirit speaking to you, guiding you, teaching, inspiring, offering rest. There's a reason that you're here. I want to help you grow in awareness of what that reason is. It's the same gift that I was offered, and it's the same gift that I desire to offer every single person here at Awaken. Now, how do we do this? Well, Peter doesn't leave us in the dark. He actually gives us some advice. Roll up your sleeves, get your head in the game, be totally ready to receive the gift that's coming when Jesus arrives. Don't lazily slip back into these old grooves of evil, just doing just what you feel like doing. You didn't know any better then, you do now. As obedient children, and here's the wisdom for us, Let yourselves be pulled into a way of life shaped by God's life, a life energetic and blazing with holiness. Let yourselves be pulled. It's not about back-breaking effort. Following God isn't about blood, sweat, and tears. It's about breathing out, resting, and allowing yourself to be pulled forward into the future. I love the beach. And if you have ever gone out to the beach on a day when there is a strong rip current, the rip current can pull you out. It can pull you across the beach. And I distinctly remember there was one day that I was out swimming in the water. I was a couple of feet off, I don't know, maybe about 20, 25 feet out. And I had our umbrella spotted right in front of me. It was here to the D8, E8, F8, right here. And then I was just kind of hanging out in the water. The next thing I knew it, I was 50 feet down the shoreline because the current had just pulled me along. And so I looked, trying to spot the umbrella. It was no longer right there ahead of me. Now it was off to the right a little bit. Here's the wisdom from Peter. Allow yourself to be pulled like you're in a current. Don't swim against the flow. Sometimes we make following God so difficult. Well, there's so much work I have to do. I have to have my devotion every single day, and if I don't do it, well, then I'm going to miss out on what God is telling me. If I don't go to church on this Sunday, well, then I'm going to miss out on what God, and God's going to be angry with me. But here's Peter's advice. Just let yourself easily be pulled forward into a life of energy, into the life that God desires for you. You surrender to the flow of the Spirit. Sometimes the Christian faith, it becomes about how much effort we can give to something. When Peter's advice is, doesn't work that way. Yes, you prepare yourselves. There are certain rituals and practices which open us up to hearing what God is speaking, what the Spirit is teaching us. But we do it by surrendering, by listening, by learning to grow in awareness. Instead of gripping and steering and moving things in the direction we think they should move in, Peter's saying, just rest a little bit. Rest now, stressed out pastor. Here's a space of silence for you to just sit and listen and grow in awareness of what this season is all about for you. That's why I always mention about the notebook, because for me, that notebook has been the way in which I grow in awareness. I have that notebook, and then I look through it. I'm like, oh, my goodness, there's all these things here that the Spirit was trying to teach me, and I was missing them in the moment, but it's a good thing I wrote them down, because now I can look back, and now I'm beginning to understand what they're all about. Now, let's close this with 4 questions and a map to help you discern where you are and what the reason is for you being here right now. First, we'll start with a map. Who knows what this is a map of? It's a map of Middle Earth. And if you look at the map, it shows a whole bunch of different terrains. If we know anything about the journey of the Lord of the Rings, there's mountains to traverse. You have the mines, the areas of darkness. There's a forest. You have the calm, serene city of Rivendell. You have open meadows. There's all different types of terrain. The invitation is to see your life as a journey, an ever-evolving journey. 4 questions to help us understand where we are on our journey. What terrain are you traversing? Where are you right now? What are you walking through? Are you in the mines, a place of darkness with ogres? Are you in the mountains? Are you sitting by a table with others in Rivendell? It's a calm period, a period of joy and celebration right now? What's the terrain that is currently showing up on your map? And then sort of a follow-up question with this one, well, what supplies do you need? Because depending on where you are and what's in front of you, you're going to need different supplies. If you're walking up the mountains, it's going to get a little bit cooler. You're probably going to need some heavier clothes. If you're sitting there at the table with others, you might need to bring your beer stein with you, maybe just light clothes. If you're in the mines, maybe you're going to need a flashlight. So what terrain are you walking right now? What's life feel like? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Are you in the light, in the dark? And what supplies do you need for your journey? If you were to cry out, offer a prayer, God, I need this right now in my life. If I had this, it would help me get through whatever it is that's in front of me. What is it that you're crying out to God for right now in this season? Or maybe it's a praise. Maybe you're in a season of celebration. What's the prayer on your lips in this moment? And then here's another question. Who are your current traveling companions? One of the things about this journey in the Lord of the Rings is companions drop off and companions are added at different times along the journey. That's how life works. We have our group, and then one member goes down. Then you pick up 3 more members. So who are your companions? Another way of asking, who are you doing life with right now? Who's there to support you wherever you happen to find yourself on the map? Third question, what are the current obstacles ahead of you? You look at that map, it kind of gives you a path. If you were to look at your life right now, what is right there in front of you? What's the next obstacle to get around? What's the next obstacle to walk through? What's right there in front of you? And then, fourth question, what is your next step? Is it walking into that obstacle? Is it calling out for help? Is it getting some supplies? What's the next step that the Spirit is speaking to you? The next step that you are being invited to take. Your life is a journey. You must travel it with full consciousness, full awareness of where God is and what God is doing in your life. One of the phrases that I have come across multiple times by multiple people, I no longer have any idea who has said this because many people have taken credit for it. God comes disguised as your life. You want to know where God is? Just pause and look around at your life. Look at what you're going through. God is right there. The challenge that you're facing, maybe it's God's way of growing you, of moving you from a place of complacency into the next area of growth. God comes disguised as your life. So all of this came about from a few sentences spoken to me by my acupuncturist in 2018, and I continue to hold these words in front of me. I continue to allow them to guide me. There's something about this season I'm in, and there's a reason that you are here as well. My hope is that I will discern what is happening in my life and that I can come alongside you to support you in discerning that reason as well.